Welcome to Break Through the Ordinary podcast. Are you ready to commit to your future self? If you are, sibling duo Mark and Claudine Charmante will take you on a journey of self-discovery to unlock your highest potential. Through impactful conversations with thought leaders, healers, coaches, and entrepreneurs, we'll be offering practical strategies and tools that generate the life you envision. New episodes drop every Monday.
And we have a wonderful guest, Adela Raffa, with us today. She spent 20 years in corporate America, and as a divorced single parent with unfinished emotional baggage, she felt stuck, stagnant, overwhelmed, and needed to believe there was some more to life, and embarked on a personal development quest that completely changed her life. Adela is an international coach, teacher, trainer, speaker, workshop facilitator, healer, and practitioner. She loves guiding people all over the world on their transformational journey, whether individual or in groups. The tools and techniques she teaches are the ones that she has experienced or witnessed herself. You're a certified Gestalt therapy practitioner, certified master NLP practitioner, and an NLP practitioner, registered business coach, sacred healing minister, Usi Reiki. I've never heard that. I'd like to know what that is. Usi Reiki master, and she holds a degree in human service and social work. She uses a unique combination of the above modalities mixed with a dash of mindfulness and a pinch of spirituality and a healthy dose of intuition. Wonderful to have you here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Gosh.
Yes, I am so curious. I've never heard your bio. So could you share with us that journey? You know, what brought you from corporate America, even that place of like stuckness, to where you are now?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So let's see. I have to rewind. I started in my mid-30s, my journey, maybe a little bit before then. But my internal journey started when I was in my late 20s, early mid-30s. And it was because I was going through a divorce. I was pretty rough. It wasn't pretty rough. It was extremely rough and devastating. And I was going through a lot of emotions that I did not recognize, like depression, sadness, anger, rage. Those were not as familiar. And I did not know what to do with them. And I didn't know how to self-regulate. I did not know how to sit with my feelings and emotion. So there was a lot of upheaval going on in my life. And as you said, I was a single parent and I had 2 young children. So I needed to be grounded and, present with them while at the same time I was going through, a lot of internal upheaval. So somebody suggested I go see a therapist. And where I came from, you just didn't do that. Like, what possibly could they tell me that I couldn't fix myself? But one of the things that I learned was the journey to healing starts with yourself. I was looking how I could fix people outside of myself so that I could feel better. And that did not work. And so I got the notion that there is a what I call an inner landscape. And when I connected with that place, that's why I started so many different things, Jungian therapy. I did a ton of spiritual retreats, workshops, anything I can get my hands on that sort of gave me that emotional, spiritual, physical, all of the isms that I can just learn more about myself and what made me function the way I functioned. Why did I react certain ways? How can I go from reacting to responding? Because I was so uptight and so chaotic and so out of touch with myself. And that became a problem, not only to myself, but at work, with my children, in my relationships. And I wanted to change that. And I love your tagline. I heard you say something about commit to your future self. And I felt like I was committed to a better future self, if not for myself, but for my children, because I did not like what I was modeling for them. and I didn't know how to change it. So I needed help. I needed people around me, and I found really good mentors and teachers and therapists and friends, and I found a whole new community. I ended up moving in that kind of same time frame to Atlanta from Florida, and I found a great spiritual community, and I landed there, and it felt like home. And that's when I found like my heart. I didn't realize there was like a heart in there, and you can actually function from that place and live your life from that place, and that was exciting. So the more I went inward, the less my outside world fit. I wasn't in alignment with the corporate world anymore. So at 39, I went back to college. I went back to school, and I wanted to help people help themselves. I wanted, my tagline is powerful, positive change, because that's what happened to me. And that's what I want to help other people create for themselves. And I'm one of their just tools to help them get there, because I do believe that we all have the answers within ourselves. Like I did. I just had to get there. I didn't know how to get inside. And but once I did, it was like so exciting. And it's a long journey, and it's still going on, right? It's not the destination, as they say. It's the journey itself. And uh, so yeah, that's the long version, I guess, of how it all started, and it's continued since I as I went to school, I started learning about Gestalt therapy. Actually, I started as a client, patient myself, and really liked that modality. I called it adult therapy because it was all about taking responsibility of yourself. And if you ever gone through a rough breakup, um, you may recognize the word blame there. And so learning to take responsibility for myself was actually very freeing. And it gave me two things. It gave me more choice and more freedom, and less suffering. So three things: less suffering, because um, once I learned that it doesn't have to be perfect, you just have to make a decision and take responsibility for it. It gives you a lot of space, and I like that. So, and then also with Gestalt, it's very much with the whole person. It's about being in the present, and I struggled with being in the present because I was either in the past, suffering, or I was in the future, worried. So the notion of being with what is right here and right now, and being aware of what is here. It doesn't have to be pretty or anything like that, but be aware of it. Helped me tremendously in my healing as well. So, uh, and like dealing with my unfinished business, because it wasn't about the divorce itself; it went further back. Well, my healing, right? So that's what I loved about Gestalt therapy. And then I just wanted to learn everything about it, and enrolled in everything I could get my hands on. And the same thing with NLP. NLP came into my life about that same time, and I wanted to learn everything about it. So I started as a student and ended up being a practitioner, master practitioner. I wanted to learn so I could teach others how to improve their lives with just a few tweaks here and there, or just change their perspective on things, or broaden their perspective, because that's what happened to me. I was like this, and I didn't see past myself, and so I like the Gestalt and NLP for that. And then I found mindfulness in my travels on my journey, and my mindfulness really helped me even be present more and grounded at the same time. And it also helped me slow down, because I can be pretty fast. I'm with my family right now, and I'm realizing how fast we move as a family. And mindfulness helped me slow down and breathe and breathe and breathe. Um, so, and then the body modalities, like the Reiki. and the healing ministry, it came because I believe in somatic work. I don't believe, well, I do believe that body, mind, spirit, and emotion all go hand in hand. It's all like one. It's the whole person. And I think body work helped a lot. Energy healing helps a lot with our healing. So I wanted to learn more about that too. I don't use it as much in my practice, but it's there if I feel called to do so, or somebody asks me to help them with some energy blocks or movement or things like that. So that's why I learn everything I want to teach. So, and I teach, everything I want to learn. So, yeah, that's the kind of my thing. Lifelong students. I'm always learning things.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there.
I went on.
I understand it though. All those modalities. We've done a lot here together too. But I want to focus on NLP.
Sure.
For our listeners. If you NeuroLinguistic Programming, if you could really explain that and share what it is, the process.
Sure. I think the easiest thing to explain it sort of is if I say NLP is sort of the language of the mind. The language of the mind. It's kind of a series of techniques and tools. It's processes. It's attitudes for creating change in a person's life. It's a mindset, right? If you have a certain set of mindset, NLP can help you create a different outcome, create a different way of looking at things. So the word itself, it's 3 words, NeuroLinguistic Programming. So the neuro part talks about the components of the neurology. So the physical, the emotional, and the mental. The linguistic part of it talks about the language. And the language there is not just the words and the actual language you speak, but it's more about the body language, the how we communicate internally as well as externally, right? So it's all to do with language, body language, the actual language, and everything in between, the tonality of a language. That's the linguistic part of it. And then the programming is the sort of the internal operating system that we have. It's all our experiences that we've had, our upbringing, our programming, and our conditioning. That's where that lives. So the neurolinguistic programming, you can look at it as like the language of the mind. It's how we operate. It's our operating system. So if we can learn how we operate, we can unlearn and learn new skills and new tools and new techniques, a new way of looking at the world. Because we all have a map of the world. And one of the sayings that we have in NLP is the map is not the territory. So I have a worldview and you do too. And it doesn't mean that mine is right and yours is wrong or vice versa. It's just from our perspective. It's a different perspective. Subjective.
Yes, it is.
What are the interventions that you as a coach, NLP master, Gestalt, that your clients can expect from, like if we use the NLP, and I don't know that you do that, like, oh, I'm just using NLP, right? Like you're a Gestalt too. Yeah. You're the whole, person. And so what would some results that someone would expect if they were to do this body of work with you?
That's a good question. So I don't have a formula because I work with the person that comes to me. And I listen to their request, help me with X, Y, Z, or I need to change 1, 2, 3. And then based on what they ask, I usually partner up with them. What do you think of this? Does this sound good if we do this? But what I normally ask them is, what is your desired outcome? After working with me, what is it that you would like to see at the end of it? that will help me determine and decide which way to go. Because it's not same for everybody. I wish I had a formula. If there probably is a formula, I just haven't figured that one out. Because I find that people are unique, and I want to be as um, present and help them where they hurt the most. And if I'm using some sort of a formula, for me, it doesn't feel like I am with them. I'm with the formula, if that makes sense.
Sure. No, it does really make sense.
So you have all these modalities, but we were talking about NLP, and what distinguishes it or makes that different from other therapies or modalities? Like, what's the contrast?
That's another great question. I think what I like about NLP and what makes it different from me is that it really works with the person's perception and perspective of the world, to understand the person. Where are you coming from, and what is it like to be you in your world? Show me. So then I can help you, like, step out of your own world. And I also believe that NLP really works with the unconscious. And we have learned to detect a lot of what is going on with the unconscious. Like, there is a saying that I heard that I like from an NLP master that said something about the conscious mind is the goal setter, but the unconscious mind is the goal getter. So when you want to get to a goal, you work with the unconscious, and NLP is a really good way to get to work with the unconscious. We look at the body language, we look at eye excessive movements, we listen for what is not spoken in the sentences, we look for what's missing and what's not said. And we work with all the senses. So, what you see, what you hear, what you feel, what you taste, what you smell. So the senses, we always work with the senses. And that can give a lot of information and help a person when they tap into their imagination. So that's one of the things that's some of the things that I like about NLP. And I'm sure there's other modalities that are also great and can get to that same place. But I found, for me, NLP is very effective.
And I just want to piggyback on that for a second, if I could. So when you work with somebody, is it like a long stretch? Is there a set time? Do you notice that there's, it takes a month or it takes 4 sessions, or is it just an ongoing like therapy?
It's not. It's usually a shorter term. Yeah, it's usually shorter term sessions. I'm not a lifelong person. It's usually I'm shorter term, but people come revisit me for a tune-up. A tune-up, yeah. I would say when people start working with me, they work with me weekly for a month or so, and then we might scale it down to twice a month, and then once a month, and then quarterly, and then if they want to continue, they can. But then and I offered other classes if they want to move into more of a learning. Like, maybe I offer like a communications course, so they might jump in there. And if some things comes up during that time, they might jump in and want to do some more one-on-one time with me. I think of myself more as a teacher. I want to teach you the tools for you to learn to self-regulate and help yourself as much as possible.
I'm hearing, NLP is right. These are my words. There's a part where you tune in to become both a better listener, experiencer, right? And for your clients, combining that into then how do they create, right? Because the mechanism of language and body language too. I know there's a lot of ways we communicate, but I'm going to just use the spoken word for right now. And having them create what they want. So how do you bring that together for them? And I know everyone's unique, but how do you see that coming together so that they can create what they want through the spoken language in their results?
Sure. One of the things that people do a lot, and one I'll give you an example of how I can help them. When somebody comes in and talk a lot about what they don't want to see in their life, what they're tired of seeing in their life, that's a great place for me to help them reframe and help them focus on what is that you do want, right? What are we moving towards? I can tell we're moving away from all those other things, but what are we actually moving towards? So help them see, like, what was your word again? You called it future self. What is your future self committing to here? What do you want to see yourself as in the future? And then I can help them work towards that, because we in NLP we focus on what we do want and not what we don't want, because we don't work with the negatives. A don't is a negative. I don't want to be in a bad relationship. You're going to get more bad relationships if you focus on that. So what is it that you do want? What kind of relationship do you want to be in? So I can coach them and help them and tweak their language to get, oh yeah, that's what I meant. Oh yeah, that's what I want. So then can you tell me now what it is that you want in your future? Yes, I want to have a loving, caring, committed relationship. Voila. So that's what we work towards then.
Yeah, there's almost like an embodiment and alignment. You're right, because the brain will just hear, I don't want, and they don't filter out.
Correct.
So from this place of having the optimal outcome of that client, what is it that you open up to has them move towards it? Because it sounds almost like we're programming our brain like, oh, want that. Then the goal setter and then the goal maker, right, will then align. How do you keep people in that space of moving towards?
Oh, great question. Yeah, really good questions. Moving towards can look and feel and sound differently. And it's sometimes the questions that I ask them. What are you committed to do every day to move towards your goal? And not only the goal, but actually the desired outcome. Because looking at, okay, let's use that loving, caring, committed relationship I just mentioned. Okay, what's the desired outcome? Because that can be, you can have that already in your life. Maybe it's, with your coworker, maybe it's with your, children, maybe it's your parents. But with a loving partner, what's the desired outcome? It goes a little deeper. What's the purpose of it? What's the desired outcome for wanting to be in that committed relationship? It's to create a future, whatever that might be for that person. So if that's the desired outcome, we break it up in smaller goals and then something that we can commit to every single day to do.
So what an example of that, I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, okay, say you want to get into a committed relationship because you want to be acknowledged or seen. So you would work with somebody on a daily basis how they're going to see themselves? Yeah. Is that
and people love to make lists, make a list of the perfect person or the perfect partner that you want to be with, right? And then go be that partner, go be that person. Start there. Be, loving, be committed, be all those things that you listed on that list, and you'll start vibrating. You'll start noticing people that are like that around you more. Be the change kind of thing. So start with yourself, and then you will attract people that are like yourself. People want to hang out with people that are like us, like yourself. We like people that are like us. So be the best yourself that you can be, the best you can be, and you'll start attracting people that want to be with people like you.
Sure. When you think of the NLP, we use programming, conditioning, patterns. When I have the blind spot of what's stopping me from being my best version, right? I think that's right at the entry point. A lot of people come into, coaching, counseling, or some form of self-development, as you had shared in your story. How about that place? Okay, I have my desired outcome. I know where I want to go, right? But clearly when I look at my results, I'm not showing up as that loving, acknowledging person. So therefore, of course, I'm not generating that. Can you speak into that? Helping that breakthrough in that, way?
Yeah, well, the blind spot that you speak of is often why we end up with a helping person in our lives, like somebody who helps us see the blind spot. Like we can't often work on ourselves because there's that blind spot that we don't necessarily know our problem. But that comes with self-awareness. Like I talk a lot about self-awareness and awareness in general. If we can start asking ourselves a little bit better questions, a little bit more deeper questions, and move away from why did I do that, or right, the why questions, and maybe more into the how, when, where, what questions about myself. And it's like, what am I aware of right now? Like, who am I being right now in this situation, about most of the things, and even noticing throughout the day, who am I being in front of this person? What am I noticing about myself and my behavior and my thinking right now? And just notice and become, like, study yourself and your behavior so that you can then master your thoughts, your behaviors, a little bit better. Not perfect, because we're not perfect beings. We are just people in progress, right? But we can, the more we become self aware and notice that, oh, I behave this way now, without necessarily judging ourselves, and we don't have to judge ourselves, just becoming aware, like, okay, so when I'm in front of this person or when I'm feeling stressed, this is how I behave. And that's how we learn to self regulate, when we know our formula. Like, this is how I behave when. Okay, so next time when that's happening, I can change my behavior, or I can change my thinking. I can ask different questions. I can go into curiosity mode. I can go into discovery mode. I can go into appreciation mode. Um, and we learn more about ourselves. But are we ever going to not have blind spots? I don't know. I doubt it. There's always going to be a blind spot somewhere, because there's going to be an experience we haven't had yet. There's going to be a situation that hasn't arrived yet. So, I can speak about that right now. With my family. We are in a huge blind spot right now because we don't know how to deal with where we are right now. My dad was diagnosed with cancer recently, and none of us have ever dealt with an illness in our family. It's the first big illness. And I feel like we're all walking around in a blind spot. Like, what do we do? Like, nobody knows exactly how to behave, how to think, how to react, how to respond, because it's a new experience to us. Does that make sense? So there's going to be more blind spot. Next thing is going to be treatment. Oh, we haven't been there yet. So that feels like a blind spot to us too.
So what's supporting you then, if we use your example, if you don't mind, right, as you enter in, not just as an individual, but as a unit, right, of creating that, I'm hearing self-awareness, but this is now also, there's a we here, right? Like, it's the family. How do you create those conversations that meet what you're going through, but yet recognizing that this difficult conversation is involving more than just me?
Yeah.
Right? How do you navigate that piece?
Carefully. And with a lot of grace and space, like space to for everybody to take the time that they need and have the experiences that they have, because we're not all the same. Even if we are an us family, each of us is unique and we all deal with the situation differently. So we are learning to give each other a lot of space and grace, and the grace to be forgiving and kind and accepting and loving and understanding, and the space to allow for whatever shows up, it's going to show up. And then having the difficult conversations. I like to say, I like to say, state the obvious. And sometimes the obvious is like, hey, Dad, I'm going to have a really uncomfortable conversation with you right now, and I don't know what to start. like that, like state the obvious. And I'm going to fumble and I might cry, and you're going to get, please bear with me.
Oh, I love that. What an opening.
It's an opening, right?
Simple, honest.
Yeah. Spaciously, graciously.
And I find that when I'm working with people and they say, I want to say this to my partner, to my parent, to my child, but I don't know how to start. Like, start there. I don't know how to start. I need to talk to you. I don't know how to say this. It's uncomfortable. Right? Start there. State the obvious. Or even as, okay, you're looking at me. I'm noticing you're looking at me. And is there something on your mind? Is there something we need to speak about? I'm feeling uncomfortable. Whatever it is, like, start where you are and state the obvious. It's a great opener.
It is.
Wow.
And I'm hearing this and I'm going, and that is vulnerable, because you're really being, that opening statement, simple, honest, is really vulnerable. How do you get somebody to that space of, I know it sounds simple and I think it's amazing, but that step from that vulnerability to step into and go, yes, you're looking at me, I feel uncomfortable, is something go? How do you get somebody to that? Because that's the piece, I think, in most of our lives. It's that step. Once we take that step, all of a sudden there's an opening. It could get messy, but we can work it.
Yeah. Well, you have to be willing. You have to be willing to take a little risk, because it feels like a risk. It's an emotional risk, right? Because it taps into the place of, like you said, vulnerability. But what are we vulnerable about? What is it? What is the fear there? Rejection, not being received. Fear of abandonment, not being lovable, and all those things that we, might be our fear. So we don't go into vulnerability as a protection of those fears, right? So we'll have to be willing to take a risk. And sometimes it's scary, but it's, that is what lives outside the comfort zone. It's fear. And then past that lives the learning zone. And that's when we learn new tools and techniques. And after that comes the growth. And then we become comfortable in that, speaking into the obvious, right? And stating the obvious. So it's a practice, like everything else, it's a practice, and you can practice with the safest people in your sphere, right? The ones that you feel you have the least to lose with, or the safest people that will love you no matter how clumsy you might be. Or it could be with somebody that, the risk doesn't feel as intense. You don't really care as much if they reject you. And that could be a good place to practice as well. And it could be something less inflammatory or something less difficult to start practicing stating the obvious. Because once you do that, it's a game changer. It's a game changer. I mean, it's opened a lot of doors for me, and it's opened a lot of doors for people that I've worked with. When they come back and say, I've had the most amazing connections and conversation with people just because I was able to state the obvious. And of course, you have to notice the obvious. You have to be aware of the obvious. Like, what is the obvious here?
I hear you saying that, and what came to mind is someone I had worked with once, a motivation person, was like, the ABCs, right? Action builds confidence. Because it's now I have a new point of reference when, Mark and I have had our journeys together in sibling therapy. We've had breaks in our relationship where we didn't talk for years, right? But every time we rebuild an intimate, vulnerable share in our received, right? It's not just in this relationship, but I'm like, oh, I can be received and heard, right? Outside of this relationship, I'm hearing like, well, you got to take that step.
Yes.
But there's an assessment and awareness of, where am I choosing to take my first step?
Right. If you don't feel comfortable starting with the most vulnerable place or person that you feel the most vulnerable with, then don't start there. I like the ABC. It was a lot faster way of explaining what I just said, but yeah,
No,
I like that. Was it action?
action builds confidence.
Action builds confidence. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
I love that. I
Yeah.
might use it. Uh,
No problem. I trademarked. Wait a second. What do you mean? No, I'm teasing. I heard you say earlier that, I may refer them to like a one of my classes, communication class. So could you share something with some tips with our listeners about how to become, and you have already, but perhaps there's some pieces you can review from that how to be an effective communicator, or, even if it is the difficult conversation. I know you said state the obvious, but if there's some additional tips you can share.
I love the confident communicator course that I teach. It's a 6 week. It used to be 8 weeks, but I cut it. I cut the time, but increased the hours in the course, and I teach it every now and again. There's one in November and one in January coming up, because every time I teach the course, I get new questions about communication, and I get new, fresh input and insights from people that help me build a course. And one of the things that we talk about in the confident communication course is it's not necessarily how you say things, not what you say, it's how you say things. So not what you say, it's how you say it. We spend a lot of time talking about tonality. Tonality is really important. How we say things can make difference to how people are receiving information. One of the things that NLP teaches, and I teach that in my communication course, is that the meaning of your communication is the response you get. So if you don't like the results of your communication, change your communication, not theirs, yours.
Can we just pause right there? Wait. Can you repeat that? Because that just landed. That's a mic dropper. Because I think people will go, no, you didn't get it. You, right? They don't tend to see their come from. So could you just state that out one more time?
So the line in NLP that we say is the meaning of your communication is the response you get. So if you don't like the response or the result of the communication, change your communication, not theirs, yours. So if I'm not seeing the results, like I didn't get what I asked for, change how I ask it. Change maybe it could be my tonality. It could be the words that I use. It could be the questions that I'm asking. Like people ask, I always say to people too, I teach people to ask better questions. Ask better questions. We ask why questions. And when you ask why questions, my defense will go up. Why are you doing it that way? Why questions? If you want somebody to have their guard up, ask them a why question, because we get suspicious. We get why are you asking me that? We feel defensive. We feel judged when we get asked why questions. So better questions: how, when, what, where. And I go through a series of ways of asking better questions of your partner, of your children, and then even with difficult communicators, like my father. I can go back to my dad. He is a very stoic, very macho kind of old world Croatian man. He's the head of the household, and this is a very uncomfortable space for him to be in. And it's not easy to. I've always struggled with my communication with him. Like in the past, we've always struggled communicating, and I learned one way to communicate with my dad and really reach him is to join him in his silence. Another way that I have learned to communicate really well with my dad, I go to soccer with him. He loves soccer. He sponsors a team and follows a team. I go with him. And that's how we communicate. So communication doesn't always have to be words. It could be lots of ways of saying, I love you, I care for you. You're important to me. You matter to me, because those things that I just described is how I'm saying that. I don't know. It's not easy for me to say I love you to my dad, but I can show in my actions to him that I care about him, right? And that I love him. Um, with my kids, I can tell them I love you 10 times a day. It's not a problem, right? So you have to just, you don't have, being a confident communicator is not knowing exactly what to say all the time to every single person. There's not a script. It's more about reading the situation, reading the person, being present, being self-aware, knowing yourself well enough, or getting to know yourself to see, where can I take a risk, where can I take a chance, where does it feel confident, where do I feel okay with, stating the obvious, for example, and where do I need to just not say anything right now, where's that appropriate.
Thank you.
You're meeting people where they are.
Yeah.
Without losing yourself. It's like, know myself, know where I'm okay going to these places, and then reading that person and being able to give what feels comfortable to meet them somewhere. Wow. It sounds so simple. It sounds simple, but it's a really sophisticated way of being, to really live in that place.
I like simple. I like simple techniques. I like simple tools that people are going to remember and actually able to practice at home. They're not always easy, but they are simple. I work with simple, like that hits for me. And so usually when I say, like, just a little tool or technique, people say, "Oh, that sounds so simple," but it's not easy. No, life is not always easy. Life, or I shouldn't say that, because life really just is. It's how we place judgments on it, and words like not easy or easy, that make life something else. But there's going to be situations and people and experiences that are not easy, right? And what do we do in those situations? How do we have conversations that are difficult? I need to set boundaries with somebody, let's say. How do I set boundaries? I'm uncomfortable. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to start the conversation. I'm angry. Like, all of those things can happen to people. Like, if you're human, those things are going to happen to you. It's how do you handle yourself in those various situations? And it's really practicing. Like, you're going to mess up sometimes. You're going to do really well other times. Take what works, do that again. Rework what didn't work and figure something else out. But don't be afraid of getting to know yourself. People are afraid to go in there, like go into that inner landscape and discover who you are and all your flaws and, blind spots and darkness. As much as, we have the pretty, the beautiful, the awesome, and it's all there. It's all there for us to discover.
It's a reminder of what you said earlier too. It's the languaging inside that also creates a lot of our reality. Not all, it does create our reality and our experience. And that's again, another level of ownership.
Yes.
And
it,
we all get to embrace.
And it can change. It's just sometimes we just need, like the other day, I'll give you another example. I'm spending almost 3 months here at home in Sweden with my family before I go back in 10 days to US. It's been, what did somebody say? If you think you're enlightened, go spend a week with your family. I don't know what they say about 3 months. I don't know. But the other day, I'm staying at my sister's house, and we woke up in the morning, and she was in the kitchen making coffee, and I came out and I saw the sunrise, and it was beautiful sky, and it was pink. And I said, "Oh my God, look at the sun! Look at the sky! It's so beautiful." And she came out of the kitchen looking at me like I was, "What? Look at the sky! Aren't you looking at all this laundry?" Because we were doing laundry. I was looking at all the laundry we had to do, and I thought that's a perfect example of what we focus on, we'll get, right? what you focus on, you'll get more of. I got beautiful sky, and that put me in a great mood. She saw the laundry and she felt like overwhelmed. So simple things. And now she told me, this morning I got up and I looked at the sky, and you're right, it's pretty. Like sometimes you just need somebody to like shift your perspective a little bit. And because she couldn't figure out why I was looking at the sky, like what's with the sky. So sometimes we just need like little push, little help to notice things that we don't notice otherwise.
Yeah.
Right.
That's really a great example of both the shift and what's available for us, right, in our own neurolinguistic programming, right? You were an interruption for your sisters.
Yes, exactly.
What a beautiful gift, and she was open to receiving it too. Maybe not in that moment, but you dropped a seed that she was able to germinate very quickly.
Picked it up, right? Yeah.
Ooh, you're a good NLP master.
I planted it.
There you go.
So NLP people are seed droppers. Oh, yeah. I got it. Okay, I got it.
They're great gardeners.
I love that. Yeah, gardeners. That's right. I have a ton of questions to ask about you too and your relationships, but I guess that's for another time. And now you have a podcast together. That's fantastic.
We haven't done that. You want to give it a shot right now, spontaneously?
Oh, how's our producer with that? Yeah, he's looking at something else right now. So go ahead, you can ask a question.
You know what? We've not done this, so go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm just really curious. You said that you have gone periods of time when not speaking to each other. And now you are co-host and a podcast, which is very intimate, and you have to have a lot of trust, I can imagine, right? And communicate well. And so how did you go from not speaking to having the podcast together, I guess is the question.
Do you want me to go first? It's pretty deep and pretty simple for me. We've had our times and stuff like that, but for me, underneath it all is love. There's no way, in my feeling of love, there's no way you can destroy that. No matter how difficult, no matter what the situation, no matter how much, like one instance, it hurt me more than I can say. Nobody will know. I was in the roughest part of my life, and we weren't together. We weren't communicating. But for me, underneath it, my love never disappears. And my love has the capacity, I believe everybody's does, to hold it all and to let go of anything, my perceptions, my grievances, my ways of seeing, we're all in this experience. And just because you're not being what I needed or I hoped for, why would that break love? Like, you're not here to make it perfect for me. It's not. My love has to be there no matter what. So for me, that's where I came from. I come from this place of, and it's not easy all the time inside myself even, but that love is there, and it's not breakable. Because I in many relationships could have been broken and never ever went back to people in my life. It just, especially family, it was rough, but it's never broken my love.
That's so rich for both of you.
Yeah. Yes. And I would say with love is also forgiveness. To come back together, to be able to take the risks again and find voices and trust. So I live by a belief that though I have many great witnesses of my life, no one has witnessed my life like my brother. I often say we were in the foxholes together, like World War I. No one knows, maybe not my perspective, but he knows what it was like with the bombs and the guns and even the moments of stillness. So there's always going to be a witness, and that would be like breaking off as part of myself, and that's not an option. Not an option.
I can hear there's a lot of feelings there.
Sure.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I love the offer. And so for me, who has not always had my voice, and I'm the youngest in a female of men-dominated culture, it was also the opportunity to take a mic. And that has been a motto of mine for probably the last 4 years, maybe even longer, was take the mic. And then Mark offered me a mic to be an equal voice. It's not Mark's voice. It's in our voice, and finding that space for each other in a narrative that did not prescribe that. Our culture did not prescribe that. Women had a role. And we're both Mediterranean, Mideastern, and Sicilian. And it wasn't a woman's, that's just not the script we were given. And I lived into the script that I was given, and that conditioning, and Mark had his. And now it's like, okay, what's ours?
Wow.
No,
So you're breaking the family and the genetics, yeah.
Sure.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
You're healing the future and past.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking. Oh.
Yeah. Thank you for asking. And I think of our nephew, is his son, my nephew, is actually our producer. And I think of, what this gives for him in his script, right? And that is, like, yes, my future self and Mark's, and then, our future. Nikki represents an embodiment of that. Like, whatever wisdom he gets to have in a new story, then, he gets to then write his from this new space we've given.
Yep.
Yeah. Forged.
Take his pieces and...
Mm-hmm.
What a great story.
Wow.
What a great story. I'm glad I asked.
Thank you. We've never been asked, never went this way in a podcast. It's always, tends to be.
Do your listeners know your history? I mean, I listened to some of your podcasts and I didn't hear your story.
We have something called a peek inside that we're doing. We're dripping it. So we only have the first episode, which I think was like 14 or 20 minutes. That is our peek inside of maybe our first 7 years of my life, so 9 years of yours. And then we'll drip another one in some time, so that they really do get to understand where we've become, the space that we have, and that journey, right? Like, we went against norms and, going to psychotherapy at 17, and our family was, and my father was certainly part of that journey, because he chose that after a divorce, and it was not a particularly a Sicilian thing to do,
No, I was going to say, so if I can tie that all with NLP and Gestalt, right? The patterns and the programming, what lives in our programming is not just ours, it's our families, right? A lot of times we don't do that in our family. We don't say that in our family. Our family values are actually just given to us. We don't necessarily always agree with them. Right. But if there are really strong family values and traditions and how things are, and we're not able to, because not everybody is strong enough, curious enough, aware enough, whatever the word is, to go beyond our family. Right. And that's what you have done. So congratulations. And that's what I have done in my family. Right. And there's, and that's a lot of times we might feel like the outsiders, we don't fit in. Are we adopted? All those, because that's really my family. But those are the people that are working on themselves, not only for their own sake, but it affects the whole family. We might do the work on ourselves, but it affects everybody. And I'm seeing that as that's how I'm able to be here in 3 months, because I have done a lot of work on myself. And it's impacting my stay now with my family. And I can imagine you go into therapy that early on is why you can sit here in a podcast together now. One of the reasons. There's probably definitely a lot of others.
A lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to also bring this to how we can ask and invite our listeners to embody this conversation of action, of being an effective communicator, this awareness that you've spoken about, and how they can embody this for themselves and maybe take a little piece of what we're speaking into. And what comes to me is stating the obvious. like the invitation of having a conversation, opening a door with somebody. And maybe, like you said earlier, maybe you assess it's, I'm going to use this word, the safest, or maybe the topic is not the most like, oh my God, I'm taking all my armor off. But opening that door with somebody that you've wanted to have this next level conversation with. I don't know how the two of you feel about that.
I think so. Stating, that simple start of a conversation. Yeah. You're looking at, I love that. You're looking at me a little funny. Like something as simple as something doesn't feel right. Can we just talk about it?
Yeah. Or I have something to say and I don't know where to start. I think that's such a great opener and so obvious. And when you said it, I thought of my years as a psychotherapist. I'm a child and family therapist most of my career early on. And I remember I had to deliver some very heartbreaking news to children about their parents, particularly my world was in adoption and child welfare. What am I going to do? Dress that up? I have something to say to you that's going to create a lot of feelings, right? Like I had to state the obvious, like saying, well, we could, and you'd see the younger therapists who it was more so much about what they were experiencing. And right, you got to ground yourself to just put it out there and then hold space for that child to right. And I love that, thank you for bringing that back. Like, oh my gosh.
State the obvious.
State the obvious. So listeners, state the obvious, post on your social media, tag us at the BTO podcast. Who did you choose? What was your experience? What was your state the obvious?
That's a great challenge.
That first line would be great. Share the first lines, how everybody steps in.
Yeah. How did you start? Yeah. How did you start? And it's the simpler you can be and self-aware. Go into your self-awareness. What am I feeling right now? I'm nervous. I'm really nervous. That's stating the obvious. I'm really nervous. My palms are sweaty. I don't know how to start. Are some examples. And I would recommend that you start stating obvious about yourself first, because if you're starting to have a conversation with somebody and you make it about them, like you're looking at me funny. I know I said that earlier, but that would be with somebody that you have already started the conversation with, right? So I said this, and now you're looking at me, and I'm feeling very raw or vulnerable. I'm feeling uncomfortable, right? You're looking at me, right? Say something. That would be step 2, I would say. Like the stating the obvious is like how I'm feeling, what I'm experiencing right now. And then step 2 would be what I'm noticing about you. And it could be stating the obvious there. But no judgment. Like it's important that it's not a judgment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, those are great words of wisdom to finish with. Complete this. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. I want to thank you. I want to thank you for being a yes, especially in the space of how much you shared about what you're experiencing in Sweden and being that space for your father and your family and yourself. And your willingness to be international. You're our first international guest. So
yay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Wish you much love and healing to your father and family.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Much appreciated and received.
And yes. And safe travels back to the United States in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Wow. I hope our listeners got from this, because this has been a beautiful gift of connection. So as I thank you, I thank our listeners to listening to the Breakthrough the Ordinary podcast. We hope you've enjoyed this episode and our deep dive into being an effective communicator, really a confident, connective communicator, so you can live an extraordinary life. If you'd like to support this podcast, leave a rating and share it with others on social media. And to catch our latest, please follow us at the BTO Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn and YouTube. And until next time, thank you. Have a great day.
Love you. Love you all.
Bye.